J. Robert Oppenheimer was an American theoretical physicist and a professor of physics at the University of California, Berkeley. He was also a member of the National Academy of Sciences. Because of his leadership role in the Manhattan Project, which was responsible for the development of the first nuclear bombs during World War II, he is considered to be one of the most famous scientists of the 20th century. After the war, he persisted in his crusade against proliferation and pushed for the global regulation of nuclear science and technology. In his later years, he had to contend with criticism regarding his duty during the war, which led to the suspension of his security clearance. This is the account of his life after he left his position in the government, as well as the manner in which he passed away. What comes next after serving in government? After claims were brought up in 1947 calling Oppenheimer's devotion to the United States into doubt, he had his security clearance revoked as a result. This virtually ended his work as a consultant for the government, and it made it impossible for him to continue his leadership role on the Manhattan Project. During the height of the Cold War and McCarthyism, the so-called Oppenheimer case stretched on for more than a year and became a major source of public controversy. The accusations and the ordeal of testifying before the committee left Oppenheimer in a condition of utter despair. In 1949, Oppenheimer went back to his professorship at UC Berkeley, where he had taught even while serving in the government. He had continued teaching even while serving in the government. He began mentoring graduate students while also resuming his studies in theoretical physics. However, the public's perception of him suffered as a result of the security hearings, and he was subjected to a hostile environment locally. Because of the continual stress in his life, both his physical and mental health began to deteriorate, and he began drinking regularly to cope. Ernest Lawrence, a colleague of Oppenheimer's in the field of physics, passed away in 1954, creating a power void at Berkeley. This made it possible for Charles Colson, a physicist at the University of Oxford, to extend an invitation to Oppenheimer to teach there as a visiting professor. He accepted the offer in the hopes of gaining some relief from the stress he was under in the United States. Being able to spend a semester away from the political tensions of his native country and being recognized on a global scale as a distinguished scientist made him feel better about himself. The end times in passing away. After serving as a professor in another country for a while, Oppenheimer came back to find that Berkeley had not altered much. When he was in his late 50s, the animosity and shadow cast by his previous hearings continued to remain, putting additional mental and physical toll on him. Stress and drinking issues, in addition to his pre-existing conditions of arthritis and ulcers, led to the onset of his chronic pain. In 1960, he was taken to the hospital with internal hemorrhage that came dangerously close to taking his life. At the end of 1962, following nearly 2 more years of deteriorating health, Oppenheimer made the decision to move away from Berkeley for good. At the age of 62, he took early retirement from his employment as a professor in order to accept a new research position at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. Albert Einstein had previously held this position. This beautiful campus would eventually become his last residence, providing him with seclusion and solace from the arduous last years he spent in Berkeley. However, his heart and intellect had already been damaged as a result of the years of legal battles and pressures that he had through. His gastrointestinal problems in 1960 and earlier stressors took a toll on his health, which never fully recovered. Oppenheimer passed away from throat cancer at his house in Princeton on February 18, 1967, when he was 62 years old. He passed away while he was sleeping. Cancer of the throat and lymph nodes was recorded as the official cause of death in the medical report. Those who were close to him believe that the psychological and physical effects of his extremely public security hearing more than a decade earlier were contributing factors in his death, despite the fact that the cancer itself was ultimately what caused it. His body was cremated, and the ashes were interred in the Memorial Gardens on the grounds of the Institute for Advanced Study. These gardens are now marked by a straightforward stone monument that pays tribute to his life and career. Oppenheimer preferred to have a peaceful finish that reflected his private personality, thus he asked to be buried at the Institute rather than receiving any further ceremonial honors upon his passing. This request was granted. Inheritance and personal reflections. Oppenheimer's legacy was well on its way to being solidified by the time he passed away. despite the fact that his untimely demise deprived the world of the possibility of many more remarkable contributions to the field of theoretical physics. He was the scientific director of the Manhattan Project, which was responsible for the development of atomic bombs that changed the course of history. He played a vital leadership role in this endeavor. The distrust and controversy that surrounded him in his final years were a reflection of the paranoia and politicization of science that evolved during the height of the Cold War's tensions. However, his attempts to regulate and prevent nuclear proliferation after the war demonstrated his dedication to ethics and responsibility in research, which, sadly, did not receive the recognition it deserved during his lifetime. Oppenheimer was dedicated to open inquiry and worldwide scientific cooperation until the very end of his life, despite the fact that his activities in the past caused him to earn the enmity of mortal adversaries and that the strain took a toll on his health. In death, he discovered the peaceful serenity that life had denied him, and he was able to rest safely in the location that throughout his retirement years had provided him with shelter from politics. Opie created a legacy that is considerably broader than any one scientific success or dispute, and he is remembered as one of the most sophisticated and influential scientists in the history of the world. His genius and vision helped shape the 20th century.